Hi, and welcome to Muhammad Bana's podcast. Today we have James Caw from SimplB.com. Welcome, James.
Hey, Mohammed, thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, how are you doing? All well?
Yeah, doing well. There's blood on the streets, so it's not exactly the most exciting time in Bitcoin. On the one hand, on the other hand, it's very interesting to see these prices this cheap. So yeah,
So,
and
James,
yourself.
give us an intro for the audience about yourself and what do you do and what's SimplB Bitcoin about, and then we'll go into your journey.
Cool. So at the moment, I'm building the perfect CASP, the crypto asset service provider. The regulations in South Africa are all in draft form, so it's quite hard to know for sure where you want to position yourself. But a few years ago, I decided I want to build the business that is perfectly set up to provide crypto asset services so that we can really help people to buy and hold their Bitcoin securely. And that's our primary focus at Simple Bitcoin services. And we registered Simple with a B instead of an E, simple.com. And so the goal really is to register to help people get started with Bitcoin, to buy Bitcoin and keep it safely and securely. Just getting into that space has been such a journey of learning. But fortunately, it's empowered by a lot of time spent in the Bitcoin world and the community. So I'm quite excited as we carry on launching this product and developing it. There's quite a lot of exciting
Let's
stuff
say some
coming
of
up.
our listeners out there are successful businessmen in the current fiat system, and they've got multiple businesses. They own property, they own equities, they have commodities. So they've got all these investments in different asset classes, about the 5 traditional asset classes. And now they want to enter into the digital asset class. Okay. This is what we trying to assist people to notify them and say, listen, guys, there's a new asset class, a digital asset class, and how can they take 1% of their wealth and move it into this digital asset class? Yes, it's a volatile market. Yes, it's on an upward trajectory if you zoom out and look at it on a 12-year basis. It is growing on an average of 160% year on year. So if you meet a business guy, where would you start off and how would you introduce him to Bitcoin and digital assets?
Great question, Mohammed. And I think for me it really is about who you're speaking to and what their need is. As an example, if you are 80 years old and you're not worried about 20 years time, then don't get involved with Bitcoin. It's not going to change your life that ridiculously.
That's it.
And I often say that as a starting point. Why are you looking for an alternative asset class? And
Right.
Bitcoin is an alternative asset class. The government at this stage has defined it as an asset, not a currency. So it's a new and emerging asset class. But has it got long-term value or not? And understanding the foundations of Bitcoin and why it was created and how it was created is very powerful in terms of educating people. I actually refer a lot of people to Safradim Amas's book, The Bitcoin Standard,
Yeah,
and now the Fiat Standard. It's like it's actually quite high level. So, the guy on the street reads that book and he goes, "Oh, okay, it's interesting, but it's almost too uh, economic."
right.
But the businessman who actually knows what he's dealing with numbers and financial services
Yeah.
reads that book and goes, "Oh wow, I understand now why this exists." And once you understand the why of something, you can understand, why should I get involved with that something? And so we really talk about the fundamentals of money, and then also the advantage of getting into an industry early. People think Bitcoin's already old and had its day, but it's only 12 years old. Um, it's got a lot of adoption happening. The fundamentals of Bitcoin are stronger than they've ever been. The price is cheap, so it's a wonderful time if you want to get involved to start looking at actually entering the market. And we will retrace, we will continue to grow because the fundamentals are so important, and adoption is growing. So yeah, there's so much exciting and interesting stuff happening with Bitcoin. But we've got to start with why. Why do you want exposure to this asset class? Um, and the asset class becomes problematic because people want to get into altcoins and new other coins and new innovations. We're a Bitcoin only business, so I only ever speak or talk or educate about Bitcoin unless I'm trying to tell you why the other thing isn't that great. There are other coins that have value, but Bitcoin really is the one that's got zero counterparty risk. And
Yes.
that zero counterparty risk is the really big phrase that for me has been fundamental in understanding why Bitcoin and why only Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I sent out a tweet today saying, in algorithm, we trust.
Yeah, and that's great for guys who've worked in the trenches, who understand how financial systems work. Because you're not trusting in a person or government, you're trusting in mathematics to continue working.
Yeah.
It's actually a beauty.
So let's, because we do have listeners and our knowledge is a bit more advanced, let's bring it down to basics for people listening out there. That Bitcoin is an algorithm that's running as code, and it's, let's say, automated from day one that it's launched, and nobody has changed the code, and it's on a trajectory plan, okay? And all these other altcoins that are out there have people behind them, okay? And people have emotions, people have greed, people have envy, people have flaws, okay?
Yeah.
So you'll get to behind all these what they call shit coins are people that want to take advantage of the other people in the market and monetize out of it. And that's when you see coins, like Luna just crashing. You see things like Celsius going into problems. You think there was one coin called Squid Coin that just went to zero. And people need to be aware of this, that there's 19,500 coins currently on CoinMarketCap, okay? And they need to do their research. So there's a saying, DYOR, do your own research. So please, guys, listening out there, do your own research. Don't take other people's opinion. But if you don't have the time to do your research, that's where people like James with SimplB can help educate you guys. That's where people like me have started a separate company called Global Institute of Wealth. And it's all about educating high net worth individuals how to preserve wealth for future generations. So James, I have a signature question to ask you, because you said, why would an 80-year-old want to get involved into Bitcoin? He shouldn't even bother, he's made his wealth, he's living in a fiat world. But if he has to leave $100 million, okay, for his future great-grandchildren, but he could only make one investment, what would he do? Or what would you advise him to buy?
Well, I'm very careful never to give advice. I tell people what I've done and what I would do, because
let's change it. If you had $100 million and you had to leave it for your great-grandchildren, but you could only make one choice, one investment. You live in Neisner, right? Would you buy property in Neisner? Would you buy shares on the stock exchange? Would you buy Apple shares? Would you buy Netflix shares? What would you buy? What would you invest in?
I would buy, if I'm looking at long term, I would buy the only asset in the history of the world with zero counterparty risk. And that is Bitcoin, right? So that means I can buy it, I can own it, I can keep it. Nobody can take it from me if I do it correctly. And so that's the proviso. I would buy Bitcoin and keep it in a backed up legacy multi-signature wallet. And I think that's what we here to talk about.
Right, let's talk about that. That's your
I remember, when it's nice to be here with you on this forum, but I remember when we first connected, I was looking for a job so that I could earn some more paper money so that I could put it into Bitcoin. And you were advertising at the launch, I think it was the Global Institute of Wealth, your firm. And so I phoned you about your marketing job that you were advertising, which for some reason I didn't get. I'm not sure. Anyway, it worked out well. Yeah, you didn't come back to me on that. But we spoke about for about 2.5 hours about Bitcoin, about our journeys, about our stories, and it was just phenomenal that time that we spent on the phone. But I don't think what you didn't realize, I was standing in the classic car showroom waiting to collect my new baby.
Yeah.
And the salespeople were all waiting around for me, and I was so deep in that conversation. It was phenomenal. Um, I bought that classic car with Bitcoin. I
Yeah.
spent Bitcoin on it,
Okay.
and then and
Congratulations on
Bitcoin,
spending the
yeah,
Bitcoin.
it was cool, and Bitcoin was quite high at that point. I think we were at about $50,000 or somewhere around there, um, and it climbed up a bit more, and I went, oh, I shouldn't have spent the money, and then it crashed, this last
And you
crash,
have
and in yeah, I was so glad to sell that classic car and buy double the
it.
Bitcoin, you
So
know.
what was the car? Was it an Austin Healey or Aston
That's
Martin?
right. No, no, it was an Austin Healey 3000 Mark II. So one it didn't even have roll-up windows, so you had to just leave the top off and go in the rain. A magnificent vehicle, yeah.
But that's
And
life. That's the journey of life. Uh,
yeah,
Working towards something, buying something, having the experience, moving on to a new experience. I myself, after COVID last year, decided to just take my family on a 5-star holiday to Egypt. We went scuba
yeah,
diving. We chartered a yacht. It was fantastic. So yeah, you have to spend some of your gains, and no regrets on that because we had the experience of a lifetime.
that's correct. And so we live in fiat, and we must remember that a lot of people would call me a Bitcoin maximalist in a way because I'm only Bitcoin. But I also realize that we live in paper money. So my expenses are in paper money. I borrow money in paper money, not in Bitcoin. And so we live in fiat. So you've got to have a short-term way of thinking as well. So the short term is earn money to pay for your living expenses, but every month stack some money, put some into your Bitcoin holding. And so, we have about 400 or 500 clients over the years.
That's good.
We have regular customers who literally just buy a little bit of Bitcoin every single month. And the difference between a little bit is really about the person who's buying it.
So
So,
what do you all offer your clients? What is the service that you're doing for your clients? And how can some of the listeners contact you and use your services?
well, because I'm building Simple Bitcoin to be the ultimate crypto asset service provider, I'm not crossing any gray lines or boundaries. My main really focus is to do everything absolutely by the book because that's how we can make sure we build a business that lasts for a long time and actually can add value on an ongoing basis. So that's why I don't give advice. I don't speak about what you should do with your money. But I do education, and education is very important because, and that's why I refer to other sources, and also why I've built a network of providers who can assist with different things. So in our network, we've got guys like yourself, the family office, for ultra high net worth individuals. We've got Bitcoin arbitrage operators who manage arbitrage on behalf of their clients and get really good returns. We've got our primary product is a multi-signature hardware wallet setup, which is a backed up legacy solution, so that if you die, your estate can manage your Bitcoin, hand it to the right people without stealing it.
So
It's
is
very
that your
important.
main product, the multi-signature service set up for your clients? Is that where you've got the 400 clients?
That's yeah. Well, no, those clients have come through the years through brokerage and other services and solutions. But but the multi-sig is a very big product, so it's an expensive product to set up.
Okay.
But
Explain to
it's
someone that
really
doesn't, someone that's listening that doesn't understand what a multi-signature wallet is. Explain that to us.
cool. Trezor is a Bitcoin hardware wallet. I think you had them on your podcast quite
Yes.
recently.
Yes.
And Trezor's catch line or tagline is "Be your own bank."
Okay.
Now, if we think of my wife has worked in the banks. If you think of the legal, and she worked in legal and compliance. So if you think of the legal and compliance requirements that a bank runs with,
Yeah.
being your own bank is no small thing. It's a very big responsibility, especially when you're holding legacy wealth in Bitcoin or in cryptocurrencies. So being your own bank sounds attractive, but you've got a lot of risk because you are the risk. So if you are your own bank and you are doing everything yourself, and you happen to die, pass away in some way, uh, does your state, does your wife, your children, do they have access to what you've done? And the answer in general to this date has been no. I've got, of those clients, I've had some who have passed away, and we've had to try and retroactively get access to some of their Bitcoin, and some of it we've recovered, which is another service, and some of it we've lost. Like there's no way to get it back because the guy died without leaving correct instructions or a good setup. And so into that problem, we built, actually the Bitcoin community has built the multi-signature Bitcoin wallet setup. And it's really a thing of beauty. When I speak of zero counterparty risk, it means that you're not trusting anybody else to manage, to own, to steal, to look after your Bitcoin. Okay. And when you have Bitcoin on an exchange, and I think we started with local Bitcoins, but then we moved to um, a company called BitX, which is now known as Luno. Luno, when you have your Bitcoin on Luno, if they happen to close down, you become a creditor to Luno in an insolvent estate. Now, I kind of trust Luno. I've seen the volumes and that they have a good setup with how they hold your Bitcoin. But Bitcoin in somebody else's custody is not your Bitcoin. It's somebody else's Bitcoin,
So
and you
what's the
get to be
famous, what's the famous saying? Not your
it's
keys, not your Bitcoin.
not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And so then you have to figure out what keys are and how they work. And the key is really it's almost like a title deed to Bitcoin.
So
Okay.
just for the listeners there, right? I always got to refer to the listeners because
Yeah.
I've get a lot of comments and people. We are here to educate the people that know less than us, not the people that know more
Yeah.
than us, right? So just for those
Sure.
listening, that the first step, buying Bitcoin through Luno or Valor in South Africa, you are exchanging your fiat for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin sitting on the exchange, but you do not have ownership of it because you have not taken possession. Correct or wrong?
That's correct. You've got a promissory note, but
Right.
you don't actually have it.
And the next step is to transfer that Bitcoin from this exchange onto a hard wallet like a Trezor wallet.
Yes. So there are different levels of security, but basically what you're trying to achieve is that you have security over your own Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so you can start with a software wallet. You don't have to start with a hardware wallet, but a
Okay.
software wallet has additional risk. And when you create, remember, Bitcoin was created as a computer program, so they used terms that kind of make sense to people. And some of the terms are actually they shouldn't use those terms, but they're the terms that are very common.
Like what? Like
So,
what terms don't you like?
well, like wallet itself,
Yeah.
the wallet address that when people think they've got Bitcoin in a wallet on a exchange because they call it a wallet, but it's actually just an account.
Can I tell you something?
It's
I actually hate the word Bitcoin. It's not a coin. It's not
no,
physical. It's
no,
the algorithm. Okay, it's code. I just hate the name, and everyone uses this picture, this logo of a gold coin
yeah,
with a E. Okay, which is on
no,
your T-shirt. Okay, it's there.
no coin,
No,
no
but
coin
okay, that's not on a coin. Like you see it a lot on social media, like a physical coin. And
in maths. Yeah,
yeah, and to me, that defeats the logic. It's like you're brainwashing someone with a photo, and it's actually the opposite because Bitcoin's not physical. Okay. They
yeah,
rather show it like, in the Matrix when you see all this green code on a black screen. That
you
to
look.
me means more of a Bitcoin. Correct or wrong?
Yeah. No, that is correct. Bitcoin is code; it's programming code. And what's interesting is Bitcoin never leaves the Bitcoin blockchain. All that moves is the title deed. And so your wallet, your wallet has two elements to it in computer programming speak, a private seed and a public seed. And those seeds allow you to receive Bitcoin on the public seed and send Bitcoin with the private seed. And so you never tell anyone your private seed. But nowadays we don't see any of that because it's all built into the wallets and the apps we can buy and download, etc. So you want to dig in and find out what's going on with that stuff, but then never reveal your private seed, because as soon as somebody has the seed phrase or the key, which all means the same thing, as soon as they have that seed, they can restore your Bitcoin to their machine or their hardware wallet or their computer.
No,
And once
not
they've
the
restored
seed.
your, they can
These
plug it.
seeds and these private keys, okay? How many
Yeah.
words are they?
How many wallets are there? Infinite.
Words. Are they words, correct?
Yeah, so there are 24 words at the moment with most wallets,
Right.
and that creates a seed phrase.
Okay. So these words, you basically write them down somewhere. I'm acting naive, okay? I know more than this. Okay. You're going to store your words, your 12 words or your 24 words down somewhere, so that in the event that you lose your treasure wallet and it gets thrown off a boat in a boating accident, okay, with 100 Bitcoin in it, that your wife, after your boating accident, can buy an empty treasure wallet, enter these 12 or 24 words and access, or you say recollect your Bitcoin, because it's all in the ledger. Okay. So now, what's the safest way of storing these 12 or 24 words?
Well, that's a great question. And having only those 24 words, we've seen this with our clients over the years. One guy took them and put 12 words and 12 words and then stored them in two different places. And then when he came to look at it, he'd lost one of the pages.
Yeah.
Luckily, because he was one of our clients, he listened to us, and every 6 months or every year he would go and check on the integrity of his words. But we told him already not to do that, but to put them together and somewhere safe, like a literal safe. And so he realized that he wouldn't be able to restore the Bitcoin if the ledger or the hardware wallet got lost. And the problem with that is nobody can. It's you're your own bank. So if you mess up and lose,
It's
you've
your
lost.
responsibility. So if you want true ownership, okay, so Bitcoin is absolutely true ownership. It's self-custody. Then you have to take the responsibility to look after your keys.
That's correct, yeah. And so having a hardware wallet with a single signature, which is one set of keys of your seed phrase, uh, having a hardware wallet with a single signature is very high risk, because if you lose or compromise that signature, somebody can use it to restore your Bitcoin into their control. Which is exactly what you don't want to happen, and it has happened. It's happened to a lot of people. And people make, if I can add in here for rookies, people make the mistake, even seasoned people make the mistake of typing that seed phrase into a WhatsApp message, or typing it into an encrypted file in their Google Drive, or typing it onto their computer and saving it on the desktop. All of those are high risk because a hacker can get them. A hacker is looking for them actively. And we've seen wallets drained, emptied by clients who've done that against our better judgment. So I've got a little guide. It's called a Bitcoin wallet guide. It doesn't even have sales pitch stuff in it. It just helps people to set up their wallet. And you can get that at simpleb.com/start.
Okay, so provide us with that link. I'll drop it in the YouTube link also for the listeners. Okay.
Perfect, yeah. Because that helps you to set up your wallet correctly. It gives you some guidance on instructions and security, and it gives you a secure digital software wallet that you have the seeds for, that you can restore. And that's a great starting point for Bitcoin security. And if you back that seed up correctly, save it correctly, put it in your will, lock it in a safe somewhere, tell your wife where it is. You can, and I say wife because mostly it's us guys getting involved with Bitcoin, but there are some pioneering ladies out there as well. You
You need to introduce me to some of these females, because I've only had males on my podcast so far. We need to bring the females on.
Well, it's interesting. There's definitely some innovative ladies out there, and they're doing good work. So especially educational, because ladies seem to tell stories even better, way better than us.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're doing good work. But store the Bitcoin seed somewhere where somebody can retrieve it, but you're still at risk because
Okay.
there's one seed. And so what the multi-signature idea is, we create three seeds. So we take three different devices, and if you want to truly get to zero counterparty risk, you get them from three different stables. Okay, say that, and this is not, I don't think this is the case, but say that Trezor was hacked. Trezor was hacked at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Right.
Every Trezor has got a backdoor into the hardware wallet.
Yes.
If you take three Trezor wallets and create a multi-signature setup, you've got a zero counterparty, you've got risk.
Okay.
So you need three wallets from different places. So we use a cold card, a Trezor, a Ledger. You can use other three, but use three different hardware wallets. Now you've
Right.
got zero counterparty,
Right.
okay? Unless somebody has all three manufacturers.
Okay.
Uh, and you sync them together to create one private seed.
Okay. So
One.
you can sync them into like one account.
Yeah, so you use the devices, you install it. There's quite a lot of hard work around this. It takes a few hours. It takes and when I start doing it with my clients and with my fiduciary businesses, fiduciary wealth managers or family offices, um, like Global Institute, if we set up a multi-sig wallet with you, um, then you yeah, the setup means that I've got to set one wallet up with you, and you've got to set it up with me on Zoom calls so that I don't have your private keys.
Right.
And then we set up the other one that I hold, and then the client normally would hold a third.
Right.
And so now we've got three private keys, which allow spending of the Bitcoin, but that doesn't really create security. So in the multi-sig setup, we do almost a business banking setup
Hmm.
where we require two people, two different devices to sign off a transaction.
Hmm.
And so when you sign off a transaction, you create a transaction, you'll send it to me and I'll sign it off. And so what's nice here is when you distribute these three hardware wallets across geographies and across control, so different people in different places, you end up with a almost unbreakable way to spend Bitcoin,
Hmm.
which means that nobody can hijack you, break your knees, get you to give them their Bitcoin.
That
Nobody
that
can.
that is a reality nowadays with kidnappings and hijackings and
Yeah, there is that reality. I don't think it's like massive, but the reality of it is there is a risk that when you have all your Bitcoin and you have it, you could be forced to give it away.
yeah.
And so that's always the risk. That's the one risk. But the other risk is that you might just give it away by mistake. You might send it to something. You might make a bad decision
Yeah.
in a moment and actually put it into a Ponzi scheme or put it into some other investment and give it away to somebody. When I'm involved, I've often been able to kind of speak to my customer through, why are we sending this transaction to this place? Why do you want to create this transaction? And actually prevent them from giving away their Bitcoin to somebody in some high risk investment that's going to crash and actually eventually does crash. But not that I'm giving you advice. I'm saying this is the big picture. Have you researched this properly? And so you end up with a good relationship and better management of Bitcoin. Now, it's not new technology. The guys at I remember when when Luna was Bitix, we were doing Bitcoin brokerage for clients, and we had 1/3 of the total volume of Bitcoin on in a month was ours going through back and forth with clients buying, and we were really doing well. Bitcoin was on the way up, and yeah, it was quite significant values we were doing, and they only had, I mean, at that stage it was only 5 Bitcoin on their wallet that they could send out without first getting approval from 2 or 3 people,
Hmm.
and so you could see the 2 or 3 multi-signature working
Yes.
to prevent loss of lots of Bitcoin. So it's an old technology that the big guys have been using, but we've kind of built it so that we can get it into the hands of guys who have a significant portion of their wealth in Bitcoin, and they can control it better. And so it's a space for long-term Bitcoin storage, not transactional Bitcoin, if you have a transactional Bitcoin requirement.
Right. It's for your hodl bag.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's for your hang on for dear life Bitcoin, which guys at this stage of the market, hang on for dear life. If you don't have to sell it, just hold on.
Yeah,
I've done the cycle 3 times. In fact, the first one I sat out watching.
yeah,
Um, I bought my first Bitcoin for 700 Rand a Bitcoin. I bought
yeah.
10,
Uh,
with all my liquid money, 7,000 Rand. And it turned into 70,000 Rand in about 6 months. This is 2016, about 20, yeah, 16.
yeah, that was the
Um,
good one then.
yeah. Then I sold it for 70,000 Rand. I was like, whoa, this is a win. And I had to move house and everything. We paid all the fees and, uh, had a jaw. And they said, okay, we'll buy some more next year. And by the time I went back to buy it, I would have had to spend 1.5 million Rand to get the same to get 70,000 Rands worth of Bitcoin. So, if I had held on to that, it would have been pretty cool.
Mm.
But I then started learning about Bitcoin. What is it? How does it work? Why has it got such value? Why do people think it's got value? And then we've ridden 3 cycles since that. And slowly I've been stacking and building a little bit of Bitcoin. But most of the time I'm earning small portions from my different income streams.
Mm.
But yeah, your long-term stack of Bitcoin, your long-term savings in Bitcoin needs to be in a secure environment that you can't spend without a third party, someone you trust to help you get that done.
Yeah, I think if people have the mindset, you know what, they're not buying Bitcoin for themselves. They're not traders. So there's a difference between a trader and an investor. And trader will think short term, month to month. An investor thinks more long term. I look at it, and a lot of my clients, I say, if you could make one move and you had a lump sum of money, but you could make one move for your great grandchildren, what would you buy them? Like if you've bought a property in Buria Road in Durban 50 years ago, it would have been an excellent move because it was a prime high street of the city. Today it's a dump, okay? And who would have seen that happening? So even property in the right location currently in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time could turn into a bad location. And as I said, the algorithms written to half every 4 years the reward for the miners. We actually need to bring some miners onto the podcast to get education on mining and explain to people how the reward system works. So we will bring that up. But it's such interesting times. And I actually, look, I also got into it at 2016. I'm not going to mention too many figures, but okay, I got in at 60,000 Rand. It went up to 90,000 Rand. I was like amazed. Who the hell's going to give you 50% in a few months? Okay. But there was no education. It was just speculation. And I got out. And I mean, to think how many Bitcoin I had at that time. Then I got in again at 2020. When I was looking for an alternate asset class. So I went into gold first when COVID came. And the next month I went into Bitcoin. And I was like, I know this from 2016. And I rode the wave up. But last year, I dedicated my whole year to studying. And I went and I did an MIT crypto course. And then I did the Sailor Academy course. I bought the Bitcoin Standard book, but I landed up listening to the audiobook every morning while walking on the beachfront. That was easier and very interesting. And then I bought another book, 21 Lessons. Okay. And you start thinking you're Keanu Reeves in the Matrix because you start seeing things in slow motion. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing, okay, there's a pattern here. There's like, you can predict what the market's going to do. You can predict how people will offload, where the fear comes in. You can predict fear in advance of the market. You can predict FOMO, okay? And this is amazing. It's like, I'm going to use this story, okay? And greed to me, okay? I mustn't get any backlash on this and comments from people on this, but greed has been in the DNA from the time of Adam. okay, from what we call the first prophet, okay, because he was told not to eat the apple, or whether it's a fig, or people have different opinions, and it's human nature to go after stuff, okay? So
Yeah.
you get in the cycles of these bull runs, the people that understand it, that buy it, and then you get the people that just come in for greed because they see these guys making the money, or gains, let's call it gains, okay? And there's like such a pattern. And then when you have this unagi moment and you're like, oh my word, I see this thing. It's a 2016 pattern, a 2020 pattern. Okay, let's just wait for the 2024 pattern. So guys, there's it there. Okay. And then you stop panicking day to day, or you stop stressing about it, and you just enjoy the ride.
Yes, I think that is it. There's two things going on though. The first is, yes, people do enter for greed, but the reality of the way the financial system is currently positioned is that people are also entering it for just to survive. They're trying to make a buck somewhere because their job is not paying them enough money to keep up with inflation, real inflation. Um, the value of their rands are deteriorating faster than they can imagine, faster than we realize.
So
And
that's
so people are
inflation.
looking for alternative investment.
So I
Yeah,
would say,
and the problem,
I would say,
so
it's not just Bitcoin doesn't just solve one problem. Okay, yes, there's future value, which I was speaking about, but yes,
yeah,
you are right. It's a hedge against inflation because it's the only commodity in the world, or asset in the world, that's limited. There is no other limited asset in the world.
yeah, we can make more of almost anything, um, almost anything. But what I want to say is that Bitcoin is a very high risk short-term investment because the price of Bitcoin is incredibly volatile in the short term. If you zoom out to 2 years, to 4 years, to 8 years, you've got a very, very strong inflation hedge. But on a month-to-month basis, you've got a lot of volatility. And so you've got to make the choice. Do you want short-term volatility for long-term significant gain? Or are you interested in using money you want to pay bills with in the near coming future? And I think we all start off jumping into Bitcoin to try and get lots of profit, but we're treating it like a stock, or like a asset class that's not a hedge for inflation. And so my clients, I've got this shirt on that says, I told you so, because we're here at the bottom of the market. It's a bit of an arrogant shirt, forgive it. But I just saw it and I was like, wow, that's brilliant. Because, people are asking me, how are your clients doing now? Especially I've got quite a big wealth manager network, because, I've been in financial services as well. And wow, they're saying, how are your clients doing now? And I'm saying they're fine. They understand.
Yeah.
My clients understand that Bitcoin is a 5-year minimum investment, which is not even long term, it's a medium term investment in the financial world. And so they're seeing the price dipping and they're saying, well, can I put another 100,000 Rand in? Yeah, yeah, sure, we can do it. Because they're seeing the price going down and they're saying, I can average my average incoming price way down. The news and the people out there who don't understand Bitcoin are saying, oh, look at Michael Saylor. He's lost everything. He's going to have to liquidate. He's not going to have to liquidate. He's hedged it very carefully and he's got very clever financial brain going on, and he's thinking in Bitcoin. And so he's happy because it's cheap, which means if he can find some more capital, he can bring his average entry price down. And he's very confident, as am I, obviously, that in the next 5 or 10 years, his investment will look incredibly good and way outperform inflation and way outperform anything else. It's an interesting industry, and you do have to do your own research. The one challenge with doing your own research is that you need to gauge where you're getting your information from. And we spoke earlier about the altcoins and the guys, and
The guy.
what happens is people, whew, why was the coin created? So we look at Ethereum. Let me throw a spanner in the works here. We look at Ethereum and people think, wow, Ethereum's the second biggest coin. We've got to own it. But we recently watched the crash of Celsius, right? So Celsius network. Celsius took on the risk of buying Ethereum 2.0 contract. So they've got Ethereum that will only be available to them once Ethereum 2.0 launches. Ethereum 2.0 has been promising to launch for like two, 3 years, forever,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they want to launch proof of stake, which is a terrible technology. So they basically want to degrade Ethereum and launch 2.0. And Celsius is not, they're not actually, they're not actually bankrupt. They're illiquid because their assets are tied into a contract
Mm,
with no real defined exit point. And
mm.
so they've got a huge liability because they've invested in altcoins and even a promise on altcoins. And it's devastating for people who've had their Bitcoin in custody of Celsius Network. And that's why my clients are successful because they've got Bitcoin in their own custody. They don't have Bitcoin on Celsius. And I was getting ragged, last year. I've got a friend who puts Bitcoin everywhere so he can earn yield, earn interest, earn
Oh, it's
yield,
taking.
staking it, the new DeFi product. And he was saying, no, how can you encourage people to just leave their Bitcoin in a hardware wallet? It doesn't make any sense. Put your Bitcoin on Celsius, earn 4%, 2%, 8%, put in some altcoins, earn 20%. You should be earning interest every month or per annum. And I said, no, all of the stuff takes away the number one premise of holding Bitcoin, and that's to have zero counterparty risk. So you can earn interest on your Bitcoin
But,
holdings,
you know,
but you're going to lose it.
there was this company called AfriCrypt that pulled a scam, and guys lost over 3 billion rand or something of money. Okay. And when that happened, and being in this industry, people feel obliged that they must WhatsApp you all the negative news to say, oh, look at this fail. You talk about Bitcoin. And I was like, why would you give someone else your money to own Bitcoin? Okay. It like goes
Yeah.
against the Bible of Bitcoin or the Quran of Bitcoin. It's like the Bitcoin standard says, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So whoever gave this 3 billion rand, did they even own their keys? Did they own their Bitcoin? No, they just exchanged money. I know someone that had 50 Bitcoin and then went and tried to stake it and lost maybe even more, 60 Bitcoin. And I look at it, it's like, why were you so greedy? You own the Bitcoin, just hodl. Okay. Then I was speaking to an accountant just this week, and we had a 1 hour, 5 minute call, and you go back and you check the time on the call. And he's trying to explain to me his clients won't buy into Bitcoin or invest into Bitcoin because they want to see a dividend like a property every month. Okay. And
Yeah.
they get happy and they get excited to know, oh, they're getting the small income stream coming out of the investment. And he's like,
Yeah.
people don't understand the concept of investing, sitting on your hands for 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. I've my whole strategy now is just I work in 4 years. So everything's like I talk to guys, it's 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. When you start with me, you come and only talk to me back in 4 years, 8 years, 12 years.
Yeah. I think that's right. And, and that's the thing. People are looking for an investment in a traditional financial model. And the new emerging businesses in cryptocurrencies are going to deliver that because it's what people want. But it's not the best way to grow long-term wealth. And so, because you're creating risk, there's no need to have counterparty risk in Bitcoin unless you want higher returns than just holding your Bitcoin. And so, one of our clients objected to our fees on their multi-sig hardware wallet assets under management structure. And I went and met with him over coffee, and I said, "Why are you objecting to our fees?" And he said, "No, if I keep paying your fees, I'm going to have less Bitcoin at the end of the year." And I went, "Okay, but don't pay me out of your Bitcoin holdings. Pay me out of your monthly expenses." And he was trying to wrap his head around that. And eventually, we worked out if we look at a property as an example, you buy that property, and then you spend money. You pay money to the government. You're not taking that out of the value of your property, off your bond.
Very,
You're
very
paying that out of
interesting fact. Yes. You don't
You know,
reduce your property by square meters every month to live.
no, and Bitcoin we need to consider Bitcoin like that. I don't want to reduce my size of my Bitcoin, so I'm going to pay fees out of the rands. And then the other thing is, so he said, well, I'm going to pay you a lot of money, over the years. He's got a significant holding of Bitcoin, and it's in a multi-sig setup, so I can't spend his Bitcoin. He can institute a transaction that spends his Bitcoin, and he's got a third party as well, who he actually works with most of the time. So between the three of us, we could spend his Bitcoin if two of us agreed on it. Um, so it's very safe for him. He's got that problem, and if he dies, we can easily replace him. Me and the third party, we can replace him and swap him out and give his wife the hardware wallet that gives him her control to be one of the three key signers. And so we've got a beautiful legacy system. And I said to him, so if you do this by yourself, um, you don't have to pay any fees. But are the fees not worth the long-term holding of your Bitcoin so that you can actually ensure that your children can get access to it? And he actually thought about it for a while because he's very clever, very a CFA, very clever guy. And he went, oh, okay, it's actually worth paying the fee. It's worth working with somebody and somebody he can trust to actually make sure that his Bitcoin is safe. And what's beautiful about it is I can't steal his Bitcoin. Even if you held a gun to my head, there's no ways I can spend any Bitcoin. Literally, I don't have any Bitcoin available to spend by myself. So you'd have to take me and a third party who I'm never going to tell you who the third party is, but they don't live in my same town. They don't live anywhere near me. Some of them not even in the same country. So we've got to, we build the structure that builds security, and that's number one, so that we can build a long-term asset. And so it's a beautiful space, and it's security done right. And these are the things that people don't really understand or know. You don't always have to understand it if you can find somebody you can trust. But I would be very cautious about who you are trusting, especially around your Bitcoin holding. One of my friends came to me and he said, James, tell me I told you so. And I said, no, I don't want to. Because I knew what was coming. This guy had, over the years, stacked about 5 or 6 Bitcoin, which is significant, especially for their circumstances. And he'd given it to a friend to trade for him.
Yeah.
Um, and I said to him, you can't do that. It's not your Bitcoin. You don't own any Bitcoin. And we would have this argument every month. How's your Bitcoin doing? And he'd say, yeah, it's growing. I said, yeah, but you don't forget, you don't own any Bitcoin. And when he wanted to buy his farm, he called the friend and said, just transfer 2 of the Bitcoin over to me here. And the friend said, oh, I actually lost your Bitcoin about 7 months ago, but I couldn't tell you. I was just broken and sorry. Uh,
Wow.
and he came to me and he said, James, tell me I told you so. And I said, no, I won't. I don't want to. And, those are the stories that are really heartbreaking. And I want to avoid those stories. And so that's why I do a lot of education, a lot of one-on-one calls. You can connect, book a one-on-one with me for free. I've taken the fees off this month so that we can start really teaching people how to hold their Bitcoin correctly. And it's a beautiful thing to do it right, but it's a risky thing not to do it correctly. Um, yeah,
So
multi-sig
I've just got
complicated.
an idea. A thought came to mind. Your
Yeah,
oldest client, what's his age, more or less? What's your oldest client?
my oldest client
Yeah, eldest,
is about 62,
62. And youngest should be more or less?
about 25.
Okay. So you deal with clients across the spectrum, huh? And do you
Yeah,
find which one more challenging?
I think the young guys normally young. I'm 35. The young guys, I feel old already. Uh, they just want to get faster growth, so they're not patient. Where the older guys are normally more patient, and so the patience makes a big difference in terms of people taking advice, taking input, not advice, taking input,
Yeah.
and thinking carefully about what they're doing. So patience is great. but a lot of my clients I don't actually deal with directly because they work through their family office or through their wealth manager, mainly family offices, because I think they have more leeway in terms of what they're allowed to do.
Mm.
But yeah, the family offices guys, they have clients across the spectrum. But definitely, the older guys harder to introduce to Bitcoin because it is a bit uh, contrary to what they've learned their whole life. But once they get it, they're more consistent in stacking and managing it, and less likely to take high risk, which is I'm not a high risk taker myself. I believe in minimizing risk as much as possible, which is why we stay with multi-sig and we do it properly.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Because I
Your
also found
experience
I also
with
found the youth that come and approach me and they want quick return. So uh, there's this one youngster came to my office the other night and he was Uncle Mo. And I was like, who's Uncle Mo? I'm not an uncle. Right. And he's like, then I know I'm looking old. And he's like, Uncle Mo, I've got 50,000 Rand and I wanted to go to 100,000 Rand in 3 months. And I was like, I can't help you.
Yeah, no, good answer. But the problem is there are lots of guys out there who say, "Oh yeah, sure, I can do that. Give it to me, and I'll make it work."
Yeah.
But remember that as soon as you do that, you have no claim.
Yeah.
You have no assets. I remember I sold a we sold a house once, and the guy who bought it said, "Oh, I'd love some art." And I'd just been, I was buying art and selling it for profit. So I called my agent, the guy who I had been buying from, and told him, this guy seems like he's a good client.
Yeah.
Go chat to him. He just spent 3 million rand on a house, so it should be he's got money. Um, and he bought the house cash, so he really did have money. And so he went to the house, scoped out the walls, took some art samples, hung them on the walls. Came back the next day to decide which ones the guy wanted to keep and which ones he didn't like because he said his wife has to choose. And the guy said, "What art?" And he said, "The art we hung on the wall yesterday." And he said, "Oh, I've got paintings on my wall, but those are my paintings." And he had no recourse legally because the art was on the wall. Um, he had to try and sue him in court to try and get it back. The police wouldn't enforce art hanging on somebody else's wall. He didn't have a contract, so it was
Oh,
a bit risky. And in the end, I camped out in the yard until some of the art got returned. The art got returned, and some of it got paid for. But this was a very high-profile businessman who just said, "Stuff you. Sorry, it's on my wall. You can't have it." And so you get into stuff like that. At least the art still existed and was easy to pick up. But if you do that with your Bitcoin, I'm sorry, it's just incredibly risky,
yeah.
and it's not
So,
worth
so
doing.
the conclusion is staking is very risky, right?
Well, ask the guys who put their money in Celsius. How many billions of dollars of assets have disappeared?
Yeah.
Um, let's go look at a nice stable coin, algorithmic stable coin. That sounds like a great idea. Oh, wait, no, maybe not.
Yeah.
The thing is that,
To me, I did a bit of research also. I was like, who's the people behind the stable coin? How stable are stable coins? Because there's no government behind these stable coins. Okay. There's no regulation behind this. A stable coin a new stable coin could come out and it could be a youngster sitting in an internet cafe in anywhere in the world. I don't want to just say Nigeria or Indonesia or be racist on something. It's just, it could be any youngster sitting on a laptop making a stable coin. And
yeah, you
even,
could.
and Luna's a perfect example with what happened with these type of things.
Yeah, and that is the issue. Everyone wants regulation because it'll help create a framework around. But actually, what's happening is the guys who used to fleece you in traditional banking have created applications to fleece you in DeFi, in cryptocurrencies,
Yeah.
and in the other structures. It's the same guys making lots of money, and things like Ethereum, or let's say ETH 2.0, they call it a STF. The those coins, those altcoins in general, have somebody who's created it to transfer their wealth, and they're transferring the wealth from you to them, not to share it nicely. You know, some people do make lots of money, some people don't. But the end game is to make me money. That's why I create an altcoin. That's why I want to add this value. Bitcoin was created, and you can look at the Bitcoin white paper. It was created to tackle foreign exchange intermediary fees, uh, because we're all stuck on credit card services taking huge fees. So it was those two things: buying stuff online and foreign exchange intermediary fees. And those two things I actually make my paper money I earn out of running a foreign exchange brokerage. Uh, I'm head of marketing for St. Paul's Forex. So we actually help people to move money from South Africa overseas or the other way around. Um, and there are fees involved with that, and we charge minimal fees, but the banks charge ridiculous fees. In the US, it's up to 2.5% of your transaction that you're paying in fees.
Yeah,
So in Bitcoin, we move.
there's something
Yeah,
like $700 billion spent on remittance fees, moving money from USA to just Mexico, I think.
that's correct. It's ridiculous amounts of money. And, you know, we moved,
The
not me,
Bitcoin could
it wasn't
solve
me.
that and bring it down to zero, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So they moved, there was a transaction on the Bitcoin network where $100 billion worth of value, and it is value, moved from one wallet to another wallet at a total fee, I think it was 12 US cents. You know, where normally we would take I would take 0.5 or 0.6% on a transaction. They moved it for 12 cents, and they actually overpaid. If I look at the transaction fees, they actually paid more than they should have. So, you know, these are the things that Bitcoin does solve. It solves a lot, and uh, the emergence of new technologies is not always a good thing. There's a lot of cool apps and things coming out, and they do solve problems, so they're functionally viable. But if they're built on the wrong platform, they can quickly become redundant. And so when I look at new technology, new solutions, I look at what's being built on top of Bitcoin. And that's where I'm really excited. Even in South Africa, we've got Bitcoin Ikasi operating in Mossel Bay, and they're selling bananas and apples at the township spaza shop uh, with Bitcoin Lightning payments.
Is it?
And so Bitcoin is really the right foundation to be building on and investing in, if in my personal opinion. And Bitcoin can now do almost anything that any other altcoin can do, with probably the exception of Monero at this point. So really, it's incredible to see the development and the ongoing maintenance of the Bitcoin blockchain infrastructure. So it's
You know,
an
I
exciting industry.
when
I
you
mean,
say it's interesting and what's going on and the development. So I was on a Zoom call with a guy I just met on Twitter in Nigeria, and he's a UX designer that's specializing in Bitcoin. And he introduced me to this website called Bitcoin Design. And there's a Slack link to that. So I clicked the Slack link because there's this community that's working on projects, Bitcoin projects in Nigeria. And there was 3,300 people on this project. Okay. And
yeah,
it's live group chatting the whole day, developing a product, a payment system in Nigeria for Bitcoin. And I was like, 3,300 people just on this one project. People
yeah.
are sleeping here in South Africa or totally oblivious and not aware to what is happening out there in the world, what is happening in El Salvador, what is happening in Nigeria, what is happening in Venezuela. I think people, that is the purpose of this podcast, is also to make people aware that while you are busy in your day-to-day job and while you are busy in your fiat system, okay, there is huge development taking place. And
Yeah.
I always bring it back to, hey guys, we're still using the fax machine kind of system, and there's people working, you know, on new technology, which is GSM cell phones. And do you remember the time when you first got your first cell phone? It was new to you, and it was new to me.
Yeah.
And today, There's 5 billion phones in the world for 7 billion people. Okay.
Yeah.
Some countries have a ratio. So if you map out, certain countries, they'll say there's 70% handheld cell phones for the population. South Africa has 140% ratio wise to the population. So that means so many people have 2 cell phones. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is how technology spreads and adoption spreads. And, we could go on for hours speaking about this, but people need to be aware that there is new emerging technologies, there's new payment systems, and I must say, Nigerian people are very awake with what's happening. They're very tech savvy, and they'll find an alternate to their depreciating currency. Okay. And trust me.
There is no currency. So how are they transact with the international market when
Exactly. And there's always a shortage of dollars in the bank.
And there's a shortage of dollars. So now there's no currency at all. What do we do? So they're forced. And I think that's, we will see adoption of Bitcoin at a country level through the emerging markets much faster. In fact, if you might have heard of Bitcoin Beach. If you haven't, then go and have a look at it. I know you have, Muhammad, but speaking to the audience, I guess. So Bitcoin Beach, Bitcoin Ekasi in South Africa is based on Bitcoin Beach, and supported by them. But El Salvador had a meeting with 42 financial heads of heads of state, in effect. Either the Reserve Bank governor or the head of finance for a specific country, with 42 people, 42 nations represented. And they were sending Bitcoin from one guy's cell phone to the other lady's cell phone, and they were just doing Bitcoin transactions just to see how it worked at no fees and across country, across demographic, across everything at this meeting. And they're all in, wow, so if we can save all this remittance fees, we'll add extra. And El Salvador's under a lot of attack for getting involved with Bitcoin, but they've already saved more than what they have spent on Bitcoin in their intermediary fees. And they'll continue to do that on an ongoing basis. So there's a lot of very exciting stuff happening, and it's happening in Bitcoin. And I think that's for me why we stay focused on Bitcoin. When you say there's a lot of new stuff coming and a lot of new opportunities, people fall for, okay, then I'm better buy the new Bitcoin, the one that's going to be better than Bitcoin, because everyone's waiting for that. That's what I'm finding when I discuss with people. They're like, yeah, but Bitcoin's going to die. And this is kind of promoted by a very nice and respectable head of certified financial planner in Joburg, and I met with him in person. But he doesn't understand the foundations of Bitcoin, and he won't read Safradin's book. I don't know why. So he's saying Bitcoin will die and something else will replace it. But that something else will be centrally controlled, because if we can't control it, we can't protect you. And that's the big pitch. Bitcoin will continue to exist outside of any government or external control. But we then have to learn, how do we use it? How do we keep it safe? And there's no recourse. So how do we make sure that we look after ourselves? And so that's the big picture. That's Simple Bitcoin Services. How do you get started with Bitcoin? How do you keep it safely? How do you, as a company, move it correctly so that your tax profile is correct? How do you report it to SARS and the Reserve Bank? We've got tax consultants and all of these different guys working in Bitcoin, creating innovative tools that we can introduce you to and get things going. And it's an exciting space, but it is one that needs a lot of knowledge and learning. So, you and I think you said you started in 2016, but really picked it up in 2020. I've been working full time in Bitcoin with a passion for Bitcoin since 2017, and it's an exciting space. But yeah, let's focus on, in my opinion, focus on Bitcoin and look at the value that it's generating around the world. And you're in the internet in 1999. Most people are sure it's not going to make a change to their life, but those who figured it out are going, wow, this is going to be a large function of life going forward, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, great. James, I think we're going to leave it as that and catch up on another call another time. More than welcome to come again onto the podcast. It's been excellent having you. I'm sure the listeners enjoyed it as much as I did and learned a lot. So we want to thank you so much for coming on, and please share those links with us so we can share it with the listeners. And thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Muhammad. I really do appreciate it.